So, what if one of the most ancient stories in the scriptures wasn't just about the past? What if it was actually, a detailed prophecy, a divine roadmap pointing directly to the Messiah? Well, today we're going to explore that incredible story, the story of the Passover, and how it finds its ultimate fulfillment in Yashua. All right, let's really dive into this question. Is the Passover just history? Is the story of the Exodus from Egypt just a milestone from long ago? Or did Yahweh embed a divine pattern inside of it, a prophetic blueprint pointing to something so much bigger? You see, getting this is absolutely central to understanding the link between the Exodus and the Messiah.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the prophetic blueprint itself. Then, we'll get into the very specific requirements for the lamb. After that, we'll see the perfect fulfillment in Yeshua. Then, we'll talk about the promise we have in our exile. And finally, wrap it all up with how we can live as the redeemed.
All right, so first up, this whole idea of a prophetic blueprint, the story of our liberation from Egypt, it's not just a history lesson, right? It was designed by Yahweh to be a shadow, a pattern that literally sets the stage for the work of the Messiah. Think about it for a second. When Yahweh established the Passover, he wasn't just reacting to a crisis in Egypt. No way. He was laying down a divine pattern. It's like a thread he wove through centuries of history, all designed to reveal its ultimate purpose in the Messiah. And we see these kinds of blueprints elsewhere, right? Like Jonah being in the great fish for 3 days and 3 nights. That's a pattern setting the stage for Yeshua's time in the grave. It's amazing when you see it. So let's zoom in on that pattern. What were the specific, non-negotiable rules for the Passover lamb back in Exodus 12? Because let me tell you, every single detail was intentional. And as we're about to see, every single detail matters. So Yahweh basically provided a divine checklist, right? First, the lamb had to be selected on a very specific day. Then it had to be tested, inspected for 4 whole days to make sure it was perfect, absolutely without blemish. And finally, its blood had to be applied. Because that blood, that was the literal dividing line between life and death, between safety and judgment. Okay, now for the amazing part. Let's see how this ancient checklist builds to its perfect fulfillment. This is where history just transforms into breathtaking prophecy. This is where the pattern from Egypt aligns perfectly with Yahshua's final days on earth. Okay, first up, the selection. And listen, the timing here is absolutely not a coincidence. When Yashua entered Jerusalem, you know the story, riding on a donkey with everyone shouting Hosanna, it was the 10th day of the month. That was the exact day the high priest was selecting the Passover lambs for the temple sacrifice. So Yashua was literally presenting himself for inspection, right on Yahshua's divine schedule. Incredible. Next on the checklist, the testing. So just like the lamb was kept and inspected for 4 days, Yeshua undergoes 4 days of intense public inspection. He was interrogated relentlessly. You had the Pharisees, the Sadducees, Herod, the Roman authorities. Everyone was grilling him, trying to find a flaw, any reason to condemn him. And so, what was the verdict? After all that intense inspection, what did they find? Nothing. He was found to be without blemish. After all the questions, all the accusations, the highest earthly judge in the land, Pontius Pilate himself, was forced to declare, "I find no fault in him." Think about that. His moral and spiritual perfection was confirmed by his enemies. And that, of course, brings us to the blood. The entire principle of sacrifice in the Torah is built on this one foundation from Leviticus. The life is in the blood. It's all about a life exchanged for a life, a legal substitution that brings redemption. So how does that really play out? Well, back in Egypt, the lamb's blood on the doorposts was a physical act of faith, right? It created a literal boundary. If you were inside, you were safe from the judgment passing over. Yeshua's blood functions on that exact same principle. It covers our transgressions and creates a new spiritual boundary of safety for every single person who trusts in him. And check this out. This is one of the most precise and stunning fulfillments. The Torah explicitly commands that not a single bone of the Passover lamb shall be broken. Now, the Roman soldiers, they routinely broke the legs of the crucified to make them die faster. But when they came to Yashua, they found he was already gone. So they didn't break his legs. They had no idea they were perfectly fulfilling this ancient command from Exodus. It's like Yahweh's signature on the event. Okay, so the sacrifice has been made. The blood has been shed. It's done. But what does that mean for us, right now? For us, living today in a world that doesn't follow Torah, living in what you could call a spiritual Egypt? Well, this is all about understanding our position in this meantime.
Yeah, the really crucial point to grasp here is this now but not yet reality we're in. Through Yashua's blood, we have the promise of the new covenant. It's kind of like the down payment on an incredible inheritance. The full payment, when the Torah is written on every heart and all of Israel is finally gathered, that's still to come. So for now, we live in this spiritual exile, but we're holding on to a promise that is absolutely certain.
And this brings us to the most practical, critical question of all. If we are redeemed people, and we're living in this exile but holding on to this incredible promise, how are we supposed to live? How does this amazing truth actually change our day-to-day lives?
So here's a practical framework for how to navigate this exile. First, the Torah is our identity. In a world that's always trying to get us to assimilate, the Torah is like our national constitution. It's the set of instructions from our King that marks us as his people. It tells us how to live, how to eat, how to worship. It sets us apart. Second, Passover becomes a rehearsal. We're not just looking back at Egypt. We're acting out our future hope. We're literally rehearsing for the great marriage supper of the Lamb in the kingdom to come. And finally, we live with our eyes on the horizon, actively awaiting the second coming. And this isn't just passive waiting around. It's living with real purpose, knowing our King is coming back to gather us from our exile and restore everything. So, to bring this all together, it's this simple. Yashua is our Passover. He's the perfect, unblemished substitute who stepped in and took the judgment that we deserved. His sacrifice is what allows us to be redeemed and marked by the blood of the Lamb, giving us a true identity and an incredible future hope. And really, that's the question this whole story leaves us with. It's not just information, it's an invitation. We have the promise. We are covered by the blood. So the real question, the one we all have to answer, is how will we choose to live in this meantime while we wait for our King?